12-year-old Liam was a boy with a lively curiosity and a strong sense of right and wrong. He lived with his mom, Clara, in a small apartment in the heart of the city. Though their home was modest, Clara always made sure it was filled with love and warmth. She worked tirelessly as a seamstress at a local tailor shop, and every evening, even after long hours of stitching and mending, she would sit with Liam to share stories and lessons about life. Honesty, Clara would say, is what makes a person truly rich. On a cool Saturday morning, Liam and Clara walked to the farmer's market as they did every weekend. The air smelled of fresh bread and ripe oranges, and the lively chatter of vendors filled the air. Liam loved these trips. They gave him a chance to explore, watch people, and help Clara carry the small bags of produce they could afford. As they turned a corner near a quiet street, Liam noticed something unusual lying on the sidewalk. It was a wallet, sleek and black, slightly worn at the edges. "Mom. Look," he exclaimed, bending down to pick it up. Clara stopped and knelt beside him, brushing her hands on her skirt. "Let's see," she said gently. Liam opened the wallet carefully, and his eyes widened at the sight inside. There was a thick wad of cash crisp bills that he could tell were worth a lot. Clara's brows furrowed slightly as she glanced inside. "Mom. There's so much money," Liam whispered, his voice tinged with awe. Clara carefully counted the bills. $720, she said, her voice calm but thoughtful. Liam had never seen so much money all at once. For a moment, his mind raced with ideas of what they could do with it: fix the leaky faucet, buy new shoes, or even save for something special like a birthday cake for Clara. "Do we keep it?" Liam asked hesitantly, though he already felt he knew the answer. Clara's expression softened as she looked at her son. "Liam, what do we always say about honesty?" "It's more important than anything," Liam murmured, looking down at the wallet in his hands. "That's right," Clara said. "This money doesn't belong to us. It belongs to someone who might need it for something very important. We're going to return it." Liam nodded. He felt a mix of pride and nervousness. He trusted his mother's wisdom, even if it wasn't always easy to follow. They examined the wallet further and found a driver's license tucked into one of the slots. The photo showed an older man with kind eyes and neatly combed silver hair. His name, printed below the picture, was Walter Bennett. "Mr. Bennett," Clara read aloud. The address listed on the license was unfamiliar, but it was clear that the man lived in a part of the city they rarely ventured into. "We'll find him," Clara said firmly, standing up and brushing her hands together. "Come on, Liam." Their search began immediately. They started at the farmer's market, asking vendors and customers if they knew Walter Bennett. Most people shook their heads politely, and some barely listened. "Do you think he might have been here yesterday?" Liam asked as they moved to the next street. "It's possible," Clara said. "But we won't know until we try every option." The hours ticked by as they moved farther from the familiar streets near their apartment. They walked past rows of small shops, where Clara stopped occasionally to show the photo on the driver's license to shopkeepers and patrons. "Excuse me," she asked a man at a bakery counter. "Do you recognize this man?" The man squinted at the photo and shook his head. "Sorry, can't say I've seen him." Liam sighed as they stepped outside again. His feet were starting to ache, and the wallet felt heavier in his hands. "Mom, what if we can't find him?" he asked, glancing up at her. Clara gave him a small, reassuring smile. "Then we'll go to the police station tomorrow. They might be able to help us." By late afternoon, the sun was dipping lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the city streets. They stopped at a park bench to rest. Clara handed Liam half of a sandwich she had packed earlier, and they ate in thoughtful silence. "Do you think he's worried about losing the money?" Liam asked between bites. Clara nodded. "I would be if I were him. $720 is a lot, no matter who you are." "Do you think he's rich?" Clara thought for a moment. He might be. But that doesn't mean losing the wallet doesn't matter to him. As they finished their snack, Clara stood and stretched. Let's check a few more places before we head home. We'll try the library and then the bus station. Someone might recognize the name or the picture. Liam felt a pang of exhaustion but pushed it aside. He admired his mother's determination, and he didn't want to let her down. By the time they returned home that evening, they hadn't found any leads. Clara placed the wallet carefully on the kitchen counter and began preparing dinner. Liam sat at the table, tracing the edges of a drawing he had started earlier that week. Don't worry, Liam, Clara said as she stirred a pot of soup. We've done our best today. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. Liam nodded, though a flicker of doubt lingered in his mind. What if they never found Walter Bennett? What if the wallet and its contents remained a mystery? As he climbed into bed that night, the weight of their task settled into his thoughts. But he also felt a sense of quiet pride. No matter what happened, they had chosen to do the right thing. Somewhere in the city, Walter Bennett was out there, and Liam and his mother weren't giving up on finding him. The next morning, Liam woke to the sound of bustling traffic outside his window and the aroma of oatmeal wafting through the apartment. He rubbed his eyes and stretched, the events of the previous day rushing back to him. He padded into the kitchen to find Clara already dressed and stirring a pot on the stove. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said with a smile. "We've got a busy day ahead." Liam nodded, remembering their plan to continue the search for Walter Bennett. After breakfast, Clara carefully placed the wallet in her bag, and they set off, determined to try every avenue they could think of. Their first stop was the library, a quiet place nestled between a coffee shop and a secondhand bookstore. Clara approached the librarian, a friendly woman with glasses perched on the edge of her nose. "Excuse me," Clara said, holding out the driver's license. "Have you seen this man before? His name is Walter Bennett." The librarian took the license and studied it for a moment before shaking her head. "I'm sorry, I don't recognize him. Have you tried the community center down the street? They have a bulletin board where people sometimes leave notices." "That's a good idea," Clara said with a nod. She thanked the librarian and led Liam out the door. At the community center, they found the bulletin board tucked in a corner near the entrance. It was crowded with flyers advertising everything from yoga classes to babysitting services, but there was no mention of Walter Bennett. Clara sighed, adjusting the strap of her bag. "It's worth asking someone here," she said, her tone still optimistic. They approached the receptionist, a young man with a cheerful demeanor. Clara explained the situation, and the receptionist listened attentively. "I don't know him personally," he said, tapping his pen against the counter, "but that name sounds familiar. Let me think." He frowned thoughtfully for a moment before snapping his fingers. I think I've seen his name on a plaque at the museum downtown. He might be a donor or something." Clara's eyes lit up. "Thank you so much. We'll check it out." As they made their way to the museum, Liam's mind buzzed with excitement. "Do you think he'll be there, Mom?" he asked, quickening his pace. Clara chuckled at his eagerness. "I don't know, Liam, but it's a lead. Let's see where it takes us." The museum was a grand building with tall stone columns and wide marble steps. Inside, the air was cool and quiet, the kind of stillness that made Liam feel like he should whisper. They approached the front desk, where a woman in a navy blazer greeted them. "Welcome to the City Museum. How can I help you?" Clara explained again, showing the woman the driver's license. The woman's expression brightened in recognition. "Oh yes, Walter Bennett is one of our major benefactors. His name is on several exhibits," she said. "I'm afraid he doesn't work here, though. He's retired now." "Do you know how we could contact him?" Clara asked. The woman hesitated. "I don't have his personal information, but I know he attends charity events hosted by the museum. There's one coming up tomorrow evening, a gala. He might be there." Clara exchanged a look with Liam. "Thank you," she said, her voice thoughtful. We'll see what we can do. Outside the museum, Liam's excitement began to give way to uncertainty. A gala? How would we even get in, he asked. Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. We'll think of something, she said, determination flashing in her eyes. The rest of the day was spent preparing. Clara borrowed a simple but elegant dress from a friend, while Liam wore his best shirt and slacks, though they were a little snug. The next evening, as they approached the museum for the gala, Liam felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. I feel out of place, he admitted, glancing at the other guests arriving in sleek cars and wearing expensive clothes. Clara knelt to his level, adjusting his collar. It's not about how we look, Liam. It's about why we're here. Remember that. Inside the museum, the gala was a swirl of activity. Guests sipped champagne and nibbled on hors d'oeuvres as classical music played in the background. Liam held Clara's hand tightly as they wove through the crowd, searching for Walter Bennett. It wasn't long before they spotted him. Walter stood near a grand display of art, engaged in conversation with a small group of people. He wore a tailored suit and carried himself with an air of quiet confidence. Liam's heart raced as Clara led him closer. Mr. Bennett, Clara said, her voice steady but polite. Walter turned, his silver eyebrows lifting slightly in surprise. Yes, that's me, he said. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out the wallet. My son found this 2 days ago near the market. We've been trying to return it to you. Walter's expression shifted from surprise to warmth. He took the wallet, opened it briefly to check the contents, and then looked back at them with genuine gratitude. You've gone through so much trouble for this, he said, his voice kind. Most people wouldn't have bothered. Clara smiled softly. It was the right thing to do. Walter looked down at Liam, who stood a little taller under his gaze. You're a remarkable young man, Walter said. Thank you. Liam beamed, but before he could respond, Walter continued. I'd like to speak with you both, if you have a moment. Please, let's step into a quieter area. Clara hesitated but nodded. As they followed Walter away from the crowd, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was just the beginning of something much bigger than they had expected. Walter led Clara and Liam to a quieter room in the museum, away from the elegant hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. The room was small but tastefully decorated, with a long table and a few chairs. Walter gestured for them to sit while he closed the door gently behind them. First, Walter said, his voice warm, let me thank you again. You could have kept that wallet, and no one would have been the wiser. Instead, you went to extraordinary lengths to return it. That speaks volumes about your character. Clara smiled, her hands folded neatly in her lap. We believe in doing what's right, Mr. Bennett. It wasn't a difficult choice. Walter nodded, his eyes thoughtful as they lingered on Clara and then Liam. And yet, it's rare. Honesty like that isn't something I see every day. Liam fidgeted slightly in his seat, feeling both proud and a little nervous under Walter's gaze. It wasn't just about the money, Liam said earnestly. Mom said you might really need it. Walter's face softened into a smile. You're absolutely right, Liam. That money was important, though not for the reasons you might think. It was part of a donation I was planning to make to a local shelter for families in need. Clara's eyebrows lifted slightly. A shelter. Walter nodded. It's a cause close to my heart. My late wife and I started supporting them years ago, and I try to continue that work in her memory. He paused, his expression growing a little distant before he refocused on them. When I realized I'd lost the wallet, I thought the money might never reach the people who need it most. Thanks to you, it will. Liam and Clara exchanged a glance, understanding now just how much their actions had meant. I'm curious, Walter continued, leaning forward slightly. What led you to keep searching on your own rather than turning the wallet in right away? Clara hesitated, but she answered honestly. I wanted to make sure it reached you directly. I thought about going to the police, but I also know how things can get delayed or lost in the system. I hoped we'd find you ourselves. Walter nodded approvingly. I can see you're a woman of determination, Ms. Clara. Just Clara, she corrected with a small smile. Walter chuckled. Very well. Clara, I owe you both more than just my thanks. Please, let me do something to repay your kindness. Clara shook her head quickly. Mr. Bennett, we didn't return the wallet for any kind of reward. It was simply the right thing to do. Walter studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. I respect that. But that doesn't mean I can't find another way to express my gratitude. Liam looked up at his mother, wondering what Walter meant. Clara, ever polite, didn't argue further but kept her tone firm. We appreciate the sentiment, truly, but we're fine as we are. Walter seemed to accept her words. But Liam noticed a twinkle in his eye, as if he were already thinking of something else. They left the museum that evening feeling a mix of emotions: relief that they had completed their task, pride in having done the right thing, and a quiet sense of wonder at having met someone like Walter Bennett. The next day, as Clara sat at her sewing machine and Liam worked on a drawing at the kitchen table, there was a knock at the door. Clara set down her fabric and opened the door to find Walter standing there once more, holding a small envelope. Good afternoon, Walter said with his signature warm smile. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all, Clara said, stepping aside to let him in. Walter entered, his presence filling the modest space without feeling imposing. He handed Clara the envelope. Before you say anything, he began, please understand this isn't a reward. It's an opportunity. Clara hesitated but opened the envelope. Inside was a letter on thick stationery, explaining that Walter had arranged for Liam to attend art classes at a well-regarded community arts center. The tuition, supplies, and transportation were all covered. Liam's eyes lit up as Clara read the letter aloud. Art classes, he exclaimed, his voice full of excitement. For me. Walter smiled. Your mother mentioned how much you love drawing, and I saw it myself when we spoke at the museum. You have a talent, Liam, and I want to help you nurture it. The Arts Center has incredible teachers who can help you grow. Clara looked at the letter, her heart swelling with gratitude and hesitation all at once. This is very generous, Mr. Bennett, but... Walter held up a hand. No arguments, Clara. I've seen too much wasted potential in my time. This is a chance for Liam to explore his gift. It's not charity, it's an investment in a bright young mind. Liam's gaze darted between Walter and Clara, his face filled with hope. Mom, please, he asked softly. Clara took a deep breath, then nodded, her resolve softening. All right, she said, her voice steady but warm. Thank you, Mr. Bennett, truly. Walter smiled, looking pleased. You're most welcome. And please, call me Walter. As Walter left, Liam couldn't contain his excitement, chattering nonstop about what the classes might be like. Clara watched him, her heart full as she realized how much the opportunity meant to him. In the days that followed, Liam began his classes, discovering new techniques and gaining confidence in his abilities. Walter checked in occasionally, his genuine interest in Liam's progress endearing him further to the small family. What had started as a simple act of honesty had blossomed into something extraordinary, bringing new opportunities into their lives and forming a bond they hadn't expected. Liam sat at the kitchen table, carefully flipping through the new sketchbook Walter had given him. The thick, crisp pages seemed to invite endless possibilities, and his fingers itched to start drawing. He hadn't been able to stop talking about the art classes Walter had arranged for him at the Community Arts Center. The classes were scheduled to begin later that week, and Liam's excitement was impossible to contain. I wonder what it'll be like, he said, glancing up at Clara, who was pinning fabric on her sewing table. Do you think the teacher will like my drawings? Clara smiled at him, her pride clear. Of course she will. But more importantly, you'll get to learn new things and practice what you love. That's what matters. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Clara set down her work, wiped her hands on her apron, and opened the door to find Walter standing there. He held an envelope in one hand and a warm smile on his face. "Good afternoon," Walter said, stepping inside when Clara gestured him in. "Hello, Walter," Clara said warmly. "It's always nice to see you. What brings you by today?" Walter glanced at Liam, who was watching him curiously from the table. "I wanted to deliver this personally," he said, holding out the envelope. Clara hesitated as she accepted it, already feeling a flicker of apprehension. "Walter, you've already done so much for us." Walter smiled gently. "Please just open it." Clara opened the envelope slowly, revealing a check made out to her for $5,000. Her breath caught as she stared at the figure, the weight of its significance sinking in immediately. "Walter, this is far too much," she said, shaking her head. "We can't accept this." Walter raised a hand, his expression firm but kind. "Clara, I understand how you feel, and I admire your humility. But this isn't a reward. It's an acknowledgement of what your honesty has meant to me. You went to great lengths to return that wallet, not knowing who I was or how much I'd appreciate it. That act reminded me of what's good in this world, and I want to give something back to you in return." Clara glanced at Liam, who was staring at the check with wide eyes, and then back at Walter. "You've already given Liam the gift of these art classes," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "That's more than enough." Walter's smile softened. "It's not just about the classes, Clara. I've seen how hard you work, how much you sacrifice for Liam. This money is an opportunity for you to catch your breath, to ease the load you've carried for so long. Please let me do this for you." Clara hesitated, her mind racing. $5,000 was an amount she could scarcely fathom. It could cover their rent for months, fix the broken faucet in the kitchen, and buy Liam the shoes he'd outgrown weeks ago. But accepting it felt like crossing a line she wasn't sure she was ready to cross. "Mom," Liam said softly, breaking the silence, "maybe we should let him help. You always tell me it's okay to accept kindness when people mean it." Clara looked at her son, her heart swelling at his wisdom and innocence. She let out a slow breath, then nodded, her voice steady but warm. "Thank you, Walter. I don't know how to repay you for everything, but thank you." Walter smiled, his relief evident. "You don't need to repay me, Clara. You already have." Over the next few days, the check allowed Clara to make long overdue improvements to their apartment. She fixed the leaky faucet, replaced the threadbare rug in the living room, and bought Liam a sturdy pair of shoes that fit perfectly. There was even enough left to set aside for emergencies, a thought that gave Clara a newfound sense of security. As the day of Liam's first art class approached, his excitement grew. Walter stopped by to check on them the evening before, bringing Liam a small set of charcoal pencils to take with him. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Walter asked, sitting across from Liam at the kitchen table. "I think so," Liam said, his voice tinged with nervous energy. "What if the other kids are better than me?" Walter leaned forward slightly, his expression kind. "Liam, art isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about expressing what's inside you and growing your skills. You've already impressed me with what you can do. Just be yourself and you'll do wonderfully." Liam smiled, reassured by Walter's words. Clara watched the two of them, her heart full as she realized just how much their lives had changed since that fateful day when Liam had found the wallet. The honesty she'd taught her son had set a chain of events in motion that neither of them could have anticipated. That evening, as Liam packed his new supplies into a small bag, he glanced up at Clara. "Mom," he said thoughtfully, "do you think this all happened just because we gave back the wallet?" Clara smiled and knelt beside him. "I think it happened because we chose to do the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. When you lead with honesty and kindness, good things have a way of finding their way back to you." Liam nodded, her words settling deep in his heart. The excitement for what lay ahead made it hard for him to fall asleep that night. He drifted off with thoughts of bright colors, blank canvases, and endless possibilities, knowing that tomorrow was the start of something new. The morning of Liam's first art class dawned bright and clear, the sunlight streaming through the apartment windows as if nature itself was celebrating his big day. He woke early, filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness, and carefully packed his new sketchbook, pencils, and paints into the small bag Clara had given him. "Are you ready, kiddo?" Clara asked, tying her scarf as they prepared to leave. She'd taken the morning off to walk him to the Community Arts Center and meet Ms. Harper, his instructor. Liam nodded, though his hands fidgeted with the zipper of his bag. "What if I mess up?" he asked, his voice small. Clara crouched down in front of him, her hands resting gently on his shoulders. "Liam, everyone starts somewhere. What matters is that you try and enjoy it. You're going to do great." Walter had arranged to meet them at the Arts Center, and when they arrived they found him waiting outside with his usual warm smile. "Good morning, Liam. Ready for your big day?" "I think so," Liam replied, his nerves ebbing slightly at Walter's calm demeanor. Inside, the Arts Center buzzed with quiet activity. Students of all ages filled the rooms, their voices mingling with the sound of brushes on canvas and the occasional squeak of a chair being adjusted. Ms. Harper, a tall woman with curly hair and paint-stained hands, greeted Liam and Clara warmly. "You must be Liam," she said with a smile. "Walter's told me wonderful things about you. I'm excited to see what you can do." Liam blushed and glanced at Clara, who squeezed his hand reassuringly before letting him go. "You'll be fine," she whispered. Walter stayed with Clara as Liam followed Ms. Harper into the classroom. The two adults watched from the doorway for a moment as Ms. Harper introduced Liam to the other students and showed him to an easel. Liam seemed shy at first, but soon he was absorbed in the lesson, listening intently as Ms. Harper demonstrated brush techniques. "He's going to thrive here," Walter said quietly, his gaze fixed on Liam. Clara nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, Walter. I don't know where we'd be if not for you." Walter turned to her, his expression serious but kind. "Clara, don't underestimate what you've done. It was your honesty and determination that set this all in motion. I simply recognized the light that was already there." As the weeks passed, Liam's confidence grew with each class. He learned new techniques, explored different mediums, and discovered a love for creating landscapes and cityscapes. Ms. Harper often praised his work, encouraging him to take creative risks and trust his instincts. One afternoon after class, Ms. Harper called Clara aside while Liam packed his supplies. "Liam has real talent," she said. "He sees the world in a unique way, and he's not afraid to experiment. With time and guidance, I believe he could turn this into something more than a hobby." Clara's heart swelled with pride. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "That means so much to hear." Liam's progress didn't go unnoticed by Walter, either. On one of his visits to their apartment, he admired a painting Liam had brought home from class, a vibrant depiction of the city skyline at dusk. "This is incredible," Walter said, holding the canvas carefully. "You've captured something special here, Liam." "Thanks," Liam said, his cheeks turning pink. Ms. Harper said I should enter the youth art competition next month. Walter's eyes lit up. "You absolutely should. I'll help you prepare if you'd like." Over the next few weeks, Walter became Liam's biggest cheerleader, offering advice and encouragement as he worked on his competition piece. Clara watched the bond between them grow, her heart full of gratitude. Walter had become more than a benefactor, he was a mentor and a friend, someone who genuinely cared about their family. The night of the competition arrived, and the gallery where the entries were displayed buzzed with excitement. Liam's painting, a bold and colorful cityscape, hung proudly among the other works. Clara and Walter stood beside him, their encouragement steadying his nerves. When the winners were announced, Liam's name was called for first place. He froze for a moment, stunned, before a grin spread across his face. Clara clapped her hands together, her joy spilling over as Walter patted Liam on the back. "You did it," Clara said, pulling him into a hug. Liam accepted his certificate and prize, a scholarship for advanced art classes, with a mixture of pride and disbelief. As the crowd applauded, he glanced at Walter and Clara, their smiles mirroring his own. That evening, as they walked home under the stars, Liam looked up at Clara. "Mom," he said thoughtfully, "do you think all of this happened because we found that wallet?" Clara smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It happened because we chose to do the right thing, Liam. Honesty and kindness have a way of making the world brighter, not just for others, but for ourselves too." Walter, walking beside them, nodded. "And because of that choice, Liam, you've set yourself on a path filled with possibility. This is just the beginning for you." In that moment, the three of them felt the deep truth of their connection. One act of honesty had brought them together, creating ripples of change that would continue to shape their lives for years to come.